Imagine being told that the cloudy lens inside your eye might one day be treated with a few drops instead of an operation. For decades, cataract treatment has followed a very simple path. When the natural lens becomes cloudy enough to interfere with your vision, the cloudy lens is removed and replaced with an artificial one. But now, scientists are testing a very different idea. A new investigational eye drop has entered a human clinical trial in the United States. The goal is not simply to make the eyes feel more comfortable or temporarily sharpen vision. Researchers are investigating whether a medication placed in the eye could actually slow the biological processes involved in cataract formation and possibly improve the clarity of the lens. That sounds exciting. But there's something extremely important you need to understand before you start searching for these drops or delaying cataract surgery. This treatment has not been proven yet, and the story behind it is much more interesting than the headlines suggest. Because the idea of dissolving cataracts with an eye drop has actually been around for years. Some early experiments looked remarkably promising. Other researchers later struggled to reproduce those results in human lenses. So what is different now? And could this new generation of cataract drops eventually change the way cataracts are treated? To understand that, we first need to understand what a cataract really is. Inside your eye, directly behind the iris, is your natural lens. When you're younger, this lens is transparent. Its job is to bend and focus incoming light so that a sharp image reaches the retina at the back of your eye. The lens contains highly organized proteins that need to remain stable for many years. But aging changes the environment inside the lens. Proteins can become damaged. Their structure can change. Some can begin sticking together. Oxidative stress and other biological changes can gradually interfere with the transparency of the lens. As this process progresses, the lens becomes cloudy. That cloudiness is a cataract. And this explains one of the biggest misunderstandings about cataract cures. A cataract isn't sitting on the surface of your eye. It's inside the lens. So washing your eyes, rubbing your eyes, or placing an ordinary oil on the surface cannot simply wash the cataract away. This is also why some people become confused when they try a product and feel that their vision seems temporarily better. Your vision can change because of the tear film covering the surface of your eye. Dryness, irritation, and an unstable tear film can make vision fluctuate. Improving the surface of the eye may make things look clearer, but that doesn't mean the cataract itself has disappeared. A true cataract is a change occurring deeper inside the eye. As it develops, you may notice that your vision becomes cloudy or hazy. Bright lights may bother you more than they used to. Headlights can produce glare at night. Colors may appear less vivid. You might find yourself changing your glasses prescription more often. And sometimes the biggest warning sign is surprisingly simple. You can see, but you don't feel like you're seeing clearly anymore. For many people, cataracts develop gradually, which means the change can be easy to ignore. You may simply think your eyesight is getting worse because you're getting older. Eventually, however, the cataract can interfere with reading, driving, recognizing faces, watching television, or performing everyday activities. When that happens, cataract surgery remains the established treatment. And modern cataract surgery is highly effective. But scientists have been asking a fascinating question. What if we could intervene before the lens became severely cloudy? What if instead of removing the damaged lens, we could influence the biological processes that cause the clouding in the first place? That's where lanosterol enters the story. Lanosterol is a naturally occurring molecule involved in the chemistry of the lens and in the body's cholesterol-related pathways. Several years ago, researchers became interested in it after studying families with certain inherited forms of cataract. Their research suggested that problems involving the production of lanosterol could be associated with abnormal protein aggregation. That led to an intriguing possibility. Perhaps restoring or influencing this pathway could help prevent proteins inside the lens from clumping together. In laboratory experiments and animal models, lanosterol produced encouraging findings. Researchers reported reductions in protein aggregation and improvements in lens transparency in some experimental settings. That was a major scientific clue. But a clue is not the same thing as a treatment. And this distinction is where many internet videos about cataracts go wrong. A promising result in a laboratory does not automatically mean that the same treatment will reverse a cataract in an older human eye. The human lens is complicated. A cataract that has developed over decades isn't simply a pile of protein sitting there waiting to be dissolved. And when researchers later tested lanosterol directly on human cataract material, the results were not consistently positive. One study involving human cataractus lens nuclei found that lanosterol did not reverse the existing cloudiness. Other experimental work also failed to reproduce the dramatic lens clearing effect that had generated so much excitement. That doesn't mean the entire idea was useless. It means the biology is more complicated than the original headlines made it sound. And that's exactly why the new human trial is important. A lanosterol-derived investigational eye drop known as ZOC20172217 is now being studied in people with age-related cataracts. The United States pilot study is randomized, double-masked, and placebo-controlled. Those details matter. A properly controlled trial is designed to answer a very different question from a testimonial on social media. Instead of asking, "Did someone say their vision improved?" researchers can compare people receiving the investigational treatment with people receiving a placebo and carefully measure what actually changed. The first patient was enrolled in California in 2026, and the study is intended to provide information for a larger clinical development program. But there is a major difference between starting a trial and proving a treatment works. The trial has started. The answer is not known yet. That distinction is incredibly important. There have been early reports from China suggesting that some participants achieved visual acuity of 20/40 or better after treatment. At first glance, that sounds impressive. But a number like that cannot tell us everything we need to know. What was the person's vision before treatment? Did the cataract itself become less cloudy? Was the improvement large enough to matter in everyday life? How long did the improvement last? And perhaps most importantly, could treatment actually delay the point at which surgery becomes necessary? Those are the questions that can separate an interesting signal from a genuine medical breakthrough. There's another challenge that is easy to overlook. An eye drop has to get from the surface of your eye to the lens. That sounds simple until you consider the anatomy. The cornea acts as a protective barrier. The front part of the eye has its own fluid environment, and the lens sits deeper inside the eye. The lens also doesn't have a conventional blood supply. So a molecule being effective in a laboratory dish doesn't automatically mean that enough of it can reach the right place inside a living human eye. That delivery problem may be just as important as the molecule itself. And this may explain why the future of cataract medication could look very different from the dramatic promise of a drop that instantly makes a mature cataract disappear. The first successful medication may be much more modest. It might slow the progression of an early cataract. It might work better for one particular type of cataract. It might help preserve useful vision for longer. And if a treatment could safely delay surgery for years, that would still be a major medical achievement. Now, let's talk about one of the most common cataract claims online: castor oil. You may have seen people claiming that putting castor oil into the eyes can dissolve cataracts or restore vision. There is a reason this claim can sound believable. Castor oil has been investigated for certain problems involving the eyelids and the tear film. Some properly formulated ophthalmic products containing castor oil have been studied for ocular surface conditions. So a person might use an appropriate eye product and notice that their eyes feel less dry or irritated. But that is completely different from removing a cataract. The tear film is on the outside of the eye. The cataract is inside the lens. Improving the tear film can sometimes make vision feel temporarily clearer, particularly when dryness is contributing to fluctuating vision. But it does not prove that the lens has become transparent again. And there is another important safety issue. Do not put household or cosmetic castor oil into your eyes. Products intended for skin or hair are not automatically sterile or suitable for the inside of the eye. The eye is extremely sensitive to contamination and chemical irritation. Natural does not automatically mean safe for ophthalmic use. This same principle applies to many so-called natural cataract cures. If someone tells you that a kitchen ingredient, oil, supplement, or homemade eye drop can dissolve a cataract, ask one simple question. Where is the evidence in human clinical trials showing that the cataract itself becomes less cloudy? Not just that someone's eyes felt better. Not that their vision looked better in a testimonial. Not that a laboratory experiment produced an interesting result. The actual cataract needs to be measured. And that's where another group of experimental treatments becomes interesting. Researchers have investigated compounds that may influence the chemical environment inside the lens, including approaches designed to reduce protein damage or prevent proteins from sticking together. Some experimental compounds have shown encouraging results in animals. Other research has explored substances such as EDTA in early cataract settings. There has even been experimental work using genetic approaches to influence the production of molecules related to lens biology. These ideas are scientifically fascinating, but they are still research. An animal lens is not an 80-year-old human lens. A laboratory experiment is not the same as treating a patient. And an early human study is not the same as an approved therapy. This is why the next few stages of research matter so much. Scientists need to establish whether the treatment is safe. They need to determine the appropriate dose. They need to show that the medication actually reaches the lens in a useful amount. They need objective evidence that the lens changes. They need to determine whether people genuinely function better in everyday life. And they need to know whether any improvement lasts. If those results are consistently positive in larger, well-controlled studies, then the conversation around cataracts could change dramatically. But until that happens, you should be very careful with headlines saying that cataracts can now be cured with an eye drop. Right now, that is ahead of the evidence. So what can you actually do today if you're worried about cataracts? There are several practical steps that make sense. If you smoke, quitting is one of the most valuable things you can do for your overall health. And smoking is also associated with a higher risk of cataract. If you have diabetes, keeping your blood glucose under good control is important because diabetes can increase the risk of several eye complications, including cataract. Protecting your eyes from ultraviolet radiation is another sensible habit. Good quality sunglasses that provide ultraviolet protection can reduce your exposure to damaging ultraviolet light. And be careful with long-term steroid use. Steroid medications can be extremely important and sometimes medically necessary. So never stop a prescribed steroid simply because you're worried about cataracts. Instead, ask your doctor whether the dose and duration are appropriate for you. And perhaps most importantly, don't assume every change in vision is a cataract. Blurred vision can also come from glaucoma, retinal disease, diabetic eye disease, problems with the cornea, or changes in the tear film. Some of these conditions require completely different treatment. That's why an eye examination matters. Now, if you already have a cataract and your vision is affecting your daily life, don't postpone necessary medical care because you saw a headline about an experimental eye drop. A clinical trial is a reason to watch the research. It is not a reason to abandon an established treatment. Cataract surgery remains the proven way to remove a visually significant cataract. But there is still a reason to be optimistic. For the first time, researchers are seriously investigating whether the biology of cataract formation can be influenced with medication. And that is a very different question from whether some miracle oil can clear your eyes overnight. The real breakthrough, if it comes, probably won't arrive as a dramatic before and after story on social media. It will come from carefully controlled clinical trials showing that a treatment is safe, that the lens actually changes, that vision meaningfully improves or remains stable, and that patients can benefit without unnecessary surgery. That is the standard this new generation of cataract treatments has to meet. So if you have cataracts today, don't panic and don't chase internet cures. Get your eyes examined, understand how much the cataract is actually affecting your vision, and discuss your options with an eye care professional. And keep an eye on the science, because this story is not finished yet. The possibility of treating cataracts with medication is no longer just a laboratory idea. But it isn't a proven reality either. Right now, we're somewhere in between. The research has moved from an intriguing biological theory toward human testing. And the results of those human trials will tell us whether cataract treatment is truly entering a new era, or whether this is another promising idea that still needs much more work.